In the deeply fractured, profoundly distracted, and continuously hyper-stimulated landscape of our modern world, where the average human mind is aggressively bombarded by a relentless, inescapable avalanche of cheap digital dopamine, superficial information, and engineered outrage from the exact moment they wake up until the very second they collapse into a restless sleep. A devastating and highly invisible psychological epidemic has entirely consumed the masses. An epidemic not of physical illness, but of a profound, self-inflicted, and utterly tragic biological blindness. A state of existence where people spend their entire, fleeting lives looking constantly at screens, at advertisements, and at the fabricated, filtered lives of absolute strangers. Yet they fundamentally, tragically, and completely fail to actually see the rich, complex, and deeply revealing physical reality that is continuously unfolding directly in front of their own eyes. Living as entirely numb, unobservant sleepwalkers who blindly stumble through their days completely, unaware of the massive swirling currents of human emotion, hidden power dynamics, and unspoken psychological truths that silently govern every single interaction they have. But over 500 years ago, during the breathtaking intellectual explosion of the Italian Renaissance, one of the most towering, incomprehensibly brilliant, and profoundly capable human beings to ever walk the face of the earth, the legendary polymath, master artist, visionary inventor, and relentless anatomist Leonardo da Vinci recognized this tragic human failing with absolute, piercing clarity, famously lamenting that the vast majority of people look without seeing, listen without hearing, touch without feeling, eat without tasting, and move without physical awareness. A profound, chilling observation that led him to actively, aggressively, and meticulously cultivate a totally singular, incredibly powerful psychological framework that he famously called saper vedere, which directly translates to knowing how to see, an absolute, unyielding, completely uncompromising dedication to the art of total, granular, and relentless observation that served as the foundational, secret bedrock of his towering, immortal genius, and provides the modern man with the ultimate, most devastatingly effective, and entirely non-manipulative psychological superpower imaginable: the terrifying, unshakable, and immensely profitable ability to notice absolutely everything that everyone else is too distracted, too self-absorbed, and too biologically lazy to see. To fully comprehend the massive, paradigm-shifting, and life-altering weight of this ancient Da Vincian habit of total observation, you must first peer deep beneath the surface of everyday human behavior and understand the incredibly complex, hardwired neurobiology of human perception, specifically the function of the reticular activating system, a bundle of nerves at our brainstem that was perfectly designed by millions of years of rigorous, brutal evolution to aggressively filter out approximately 99% of all incoming sensory data. Simply because if your primitive brain attempted to consciously process every single shifting shadow, every subtle change in temperature, every blade of grass, and every background noise in your environment, your nervous system would instantly, catastrophically overload and short-circuit, meaning that your brain is literally biologically engineered to ignore almost everything around you, keeping you safely wrapped in a comfortable, low-energy, and highly efficient psychological autopilot that only violently wakes up when it detects a massive, immediate, and obvious physical threat, or a highly stimulating, engineered digital reward, a biological reality that ensures that the vast, overwhelming majority of people you interact with on a daily basis are entirely trapped inside the suffocating, narrow tunnel of their own immediate thoughts, their own nagging insecurities, and their own desperate desires, completely and utterly blind to the incredibly subtle, highly revealing micro-expressions, shifts in vocal tonality, and subconscious body language cues that the people around them are constantly, uncontrollably leaking into the environment. When you consciously, deliberately, and forcefully decide to override this ancient biological filter, choosing to adopt the incredibly rare, highly elite, and intensely demanding psychological posture of the relentless observer, you essentially step outside of the blinding, chaotic matrix of human ego. Instantly elevate yourself to a completely different, almost superhuman plane of social, professional, and personal existence, because you suddenly realize, with absolute, staggering clarity, That human beings, despite their incredibly elaborate masks, their carefully rehearsed lies, and their desperate, constant attempts to project a completely fabricated image of strength, confidence, or innocence, are actually incredibly terrible at keeping secrets, constantly, loudly, and undeniably broadcasting their true intentions, their deepest, most shameful insecurities, and their actual hidden motivations, through a relentless, subconscious stream of involuntary physical data that is entirely visible to anyone who simply possesses the disciplined, quiet patience to actively look for it. Leonardo da Vinci did not develop this terrifying, masterful level of perception by accident, nor was it simply a natural, effortless byproduct of his inherent genetic genius. Rather, it was the direct, undeniable, and hard-earned result of a lifelong, obsessive, and almost monastic daily habit of carrying a small, leather-bound notebook with him absolutely everywhere he went, aggressively forcing himself to sit in complete, unbroken, and highly uncomfortable silence for hours at a time, completely refusing to engage in the trivial, meaningless gossip of the crowds around him, choosing instead to meticulously, ruthlessly observe and document the exact, microscopic mechanics of reality, watching the precise, aerodynamic way a bird's wings slice through the heavy morning air, studying the incredibly complex, swirling, mathematical eddies of water rushing fiercely around a jagged stone in a river, and most importantly for your own psychological self-mastery, observing the incredibly subtle, deeply revealing ways that the underlying muscles of the human face contort, twitch, and shift. In the exact fraction of a second before a person speaks a lie, experiences a flash of hidden envy, or attempts to suppress a surge of genuine, undeniable rage, actively training his brain to process the tiny, microscopic details that completely define the ultimate truth of any given situation. To effectively weaponize this profound, deeply historical habit of relentless observation in your own modern, highly competitive life, you must first completely, violently, and permanently eradicate the single greatest, most toxic, and most blinding obstacle to true perception: your own fragile, demanding, and constantly screaming ego, the pathetic, insecure internal voice that desperately forces you to enter every single room, every negotiation, and every social interaction obsessively worrying about how you look, how you sound, whether people think you are intelligent, and what incredibly clever thing you are going to say the very second the other person stops moving their lips. A tragic, incredibly common state of total self-absorption that completely, fundamentally paralyzes your ability to see anything outside of yourself, turning you into a blind, deaf, and highly vulnerable target for every manipulator, liar, and toxic opportunist in your immediate environment, who can easily use your desperate need for validation to completely mask their own dark, self-serving intentions. The exact liberating moment you actively decide to drop this heavy, exhausting, and completely useless armor of self-consciousness, consciously shifting your internal spotlight entirely away from yourself and aggressively, intensely directing it outward onto the physical and psychological reality of the people standing in front of you, you will experience a sudden, massive, and almost physically intoxicating surge of genuine, unadulterated power. A profound psychological awakening where the incredibly noisy, confusing, and overwhelming social world suddenly snaps into crystal clear, high-definition focus, allowing you to instantly, effortlessly notice the incredibly vital, microscopic data points that everyone else is far too self-obsessed to catch, completely transforming you from a blind, reactive participant in the social hierarchy into a cold, calculating, and perfectly positioned architect of your own unshakable reality. When you adopt this Da Vincian mindset, you begin to actively, scientifically observe the incredibly complex, unspoken language of the human body, noticing the way a seemingly confident, aggressive coworker's left foot nervously, rhythmically taps the floor beneath the boardroom table, entirely betraying the carefully constructed, loud facade of certainty they are projecting with their voice. You begin to notice the incredibly subtle, fleeting micro-expression of genuine, undeniable contempt that flashes across the face of a supposed friend for a fraction of a millisecond when you share a piece of good news about your personal success, a tiny subconscious muscular contraction that reveals the deep, rotting, and highly toxic envy they have been secretly harboring behind their warm, congratulatory smiles. You begin to notice the exact, highly specific changes in a person's breathing pattern. The sudden, unnatural stillness of their shoulders, and the subtle defensive crossing of their arms when a specific, uncomfortable topic is casually mentioned in conversation, providing you with an incredibly detailed, highly accurate psychological map of their deepest fears, their hidden traumas, and most closely guarded vulnerabilities, without you ever having to ask them a single probing question. This terrifying, beautiful level of total situational awareness makes you fundamentally, mathematically impossible to manipulate, to lie to, or to deceive. Because while the average, unobservant man blindly trusts the sweet, highly calculated, and completely fabricated words coming out of a manipulator's mouth, desperately wanting to believe the comfortable lie because he lacks the psychological strength to confront the difficult truth, you, the master observer, the man who has cultivated the cold, penetrating gaze of the Renaissance genius, completely and utterly ignore the meaningless noise of their verbal narrative, focusing entirely, ruthlessly, and exclusively on the absolute, undeniable, and completely involuntary reality of their physical actions, their energetic baseline, and their behavioral inconsistencies, completely stripping them of their deceptive power and leaving them totally, psychologically naked, deeply unsettled, and profoundly intimidated by your calm, unwavering, and unreadable presence. This is exactly why the true, disciplined habit of noticing everything inherently, biologically requires the profound concurrent mastery of absolute, unyielding silence, a deep, heavy, and incredibly powerful internal stillness that fundamentally prevents you from prematurely revealing exactly how much you actually know. Because the moment you immediately, loudly confront a liar with their own subconscious behavioral leaks, or the second you aggressively call out a toxic person for their hidden envy, you are instantly giving away your greatest, most devastating strategic advantage, foolishly showing them your entire hand of cards and effectively teaching them exactly how to build a better, more convincing mask the next time they interact with you. Instead, the truly powerful man, the man who operates with the quiet, overwhelming, and deeply gravitational authority of a seasoned predator observing its environment, simply collects the data, quietly filing away the incredibly valuable psychological intelligence in the vast, perfectly organized library of his own mind, maintaining a perfectly calm, polite, and completely unbothered exterior, while secretly, methodically, and ruthlessly adjusting his own internal strategy, quietly shifting his alliances, heavily fortifying his personal boundaries, and carefully positioning himself 3 or 4 massive steps ahead of the people who still, tragically and foolishly, believe they are successfully deceiving him. Furthermore, this intense, relentless habit of continuous observation profoundly and permanently alters the fundamental architecture of your own neurobiology. Physically, mathematically thickening the neural pathways in your prefrontal cortex associated with intense focus, critical analysis, and elite, high-level pattern recognition, entirely rewiring your brain away from the short attention span, the chronic anxiety, and the reactive, emotional volatility of the modern digital consumer, and transforming your mind into a highly calibrated, incredibly sensitive, and deeply powerful supercomputer that naturally, effortlessly connects seemingly unrelated pieces of external data to form stunningly accurate, highly predictive models of exactly what is going to happen next in any given social, professional, or romantic dynamic, allowing you to completely bypass the incredibly chaotic, messy, and highly destructive emotional drama that constantly consumes the lives of the blind masses, gracefully navigating around toxic individuals, avoiding catastrophic business decisions, and identifying highly lucrative, completely hidden opportunities, long before the rest of the world even realizes that a shift in the environment has occurred. Consider the incredible, massive historical advantage this specific, highly refined skill gave Leonardo da Vinci, a man who, despite being born illegitimate, lacking any formal, elite classical education, and constantly navigating the incredibly deadly, treacherous, and highly volatile political landscape of Renaissance Italy, where a single, carelessly spoken word to the wrong nobleman could easily result in immediate imprisonment or a brutal execution, managed to not only survive, but to absolutely incredibly thrive, perfectly securing the deeply coveted patronage of the most ruthless, powerful, and demanding warlords, kings, and popes of his era. Entirely because his profound, unparalleled ability to observe the world allowed him to flawlessly, perfectly read the incredibly complex, deeply hidden psychological needs, the unspoken insecurities, and the massive, fragile egos of the powerful men who employed him, allowing him to subtly, brilliantly tailor his presence, his negotiations, and his incomparable artistic and engineering offerings to exactly match the unspoken desires of his incredibly dangerous patrons, effectively making himself totally, fundamentally indispensable to the absolute highest echelons of global power without ever having to resort to the cheap, pathetic, and highly transparent flattery, sycophancy, or manipulative betrayal that constantly defined the actions of his significantly less observant, less disciplined peers. You possess the exact same biological hardware, the exact same incredible, raw neurological potential to develop this staggering, life-altering level of elite perception, but to access it, you must be willing to endure the incredibly uncomfortable, deeply challenging, and highly demanding discipline of radical presence, actively, forcefully pulling your precious attention away from the glowing, highly addictive screen of your smartphone, violently tearing your mind out of the incredibly toxic, depressing cycle of ruminating obsessively about the unchangeable past, and completely refusing to allow your imagination to constantly, anxiously project horrifying, fabricated scenarios into the uncontrollable future, forcing your entire, massive conscious awareness into the absolute, physical, and undeniable reality of the present second. Because the present second is the only place where the incredibly subtle, highly valuable data of human truth actually exists. And if you are not fully, intensely anchored in the now, you will absolutely, completely miss the critical, fleeting, microsecond clues that perfectly reveal exactly who is secretly loyal to you, exactly who is quietly preparing to betray you, exactly what your boss actually means when he uses a specific, carefully chosen corporate buzzword, and exactly how the entire, invisible power structure of a room dynamically shifts the absolute moment a highly dominant, highly capable individual walks through the door. This practice of aggressive, continuous presence requires you to treat absolutely every single environment you enter, whether it is a highly stressful, high-stakes corporate boardroom, a crowded, noisy subway car, a quiet, intimate dinner date, or a seemingly casual, relaxed gathering of longtime friends, as a massive, deeply complex, and incredibly fascinating living laboratory of human psychology. Deliberately, consciously challenging yourself to quietly identify the absolute most powerful person in the room without relying on the obvious, superficial markers of formal titles, loud voices, or expensive clothing. Looking instead for the deeply subtle, biological indicators of true, unyielding authority. Observing exactly whose silent, subtle body language the rest of the group subconsciously, instinctively mimics. Noticing exactly who naturally, effortlessly holds the longest, most piercing, and most comfortable eye contact, without ever feeling the desperate, anxious need to look away, and identifying the incredibly rare, highly composed individual who possesses the supreme, undeniable confidence to endure a long, heavy, and awkward silence, without ever feeling the fragile, insecure urge to desperately fill the void with meaningless, rapidly depreciating chatter. By actively, continuously training yourself to recognize these hidden, deeply primal social dynamics, you not only completely immunize yourself against the highly deceptive, completely fabricated illusions of fake confidence and empty, unearned arrogance that dominate the modern world, but you also begin to subconsciously, deeply internalize the actual physical behaviors of true, profound power, allowing your own nervous system to naturally, beautifully adapt and adopt the exact same grounded, heavy, and deeply magnetic presence that you have so meticulously observed in the incredibly rare, truly elite individuals who quietly, effortlessly command the absolute respect of the world around them, transforming you from a man who desperately, loudly demands to be seen into a man who possesses such a profound, terrifying, and undeniable depth of quiet perception that other people naturally, instinctively, and biologically recognize him as a superior, unshakable force of nature. Furthermore, this intense, Da Vincian habit of total, unyielding observation is the absolute, unquestionable, ultimate foundation of all true, genuine, and highly effective human empathy, fundamentally separating the rare, powerful man who actually deeply understands the complex psychological architecture of the people he cares about, from the pathetic, self-absorbed man who merely projects his own incredibly narrow, highly limited emotional experiences onto everyone else. When you truly, intensely observe your partner, your close friends, or your trusted colleagues without the blinding, toxic filter of your own immediate needs, judgments, and insecurities, you begin to notice the incredibly subtle, quiet signs of their silent, hidden suffering. The tiny, almost imperceptible shifts in their baseline energy that completely reveal when they are quietly carrying an unbearable, massive burden. And the incredibly specific, unspoken actions that truly make them feel safe, deeply valued, and profoundly respected, giving you the incredibly rare, highly potent, and deeply noble ability to offer exactly the right support, exactly the right quiet reassurance, or exactly the right stern, necessary correction, at exactly the perfect, optimal moment, a level of profound, surgical, interpersonal mastery that naturally, inevitably binds high-quality, deeply loyal, and incredibly capable people to you for the rest of your natural life, creating a massive, highly fortified, and entirely unshakable network of genuine, powerful relationships that no amount of cheap manipulation, transactional networking, or superficial charm could ever possibly achieve. The absolute, breathtaking tragedy of the modern hyper-digital age is that we are currently living through the greatest, most catastrophic mass extinction of human attention in the entire history of our species, a dark, terrifying era where billions of highly capable human minds have completely, voluntarily surrendered their most incredibly valuable, powerful, and sacred biological asset, their raw, unfiltered, deeply penetrating perception, to the highly addictive, algorithmically optimized, and incredibly toxic illusion of the scrolling screen, willingly choosing to live in a pathetic, two-dimensional, completely fabricated hallucination, while the incredibly rich, infinitely complex, and massively rewarding physical reality completely, silently passes them by, leaving them utterly, fundamentally powerless to actually understand, shape, or control the immediate world around them. But for the incredibly rare, highly disciplined, and fiercely independent man who fully realizes the incredibly dark, tragic nature of this modern trap, who actively, aggressively decides to rip his eyes away from the blinding, hypnotic light of the distraction machine and firmly, intensely lock his gaze onto the actual physical, breathing reality of the people standing directly in front of him, the potential, unadulterated power he can silently, inevitably accumulate is absolutely, mathematically limitless. You must therefore make a massive, unyielding, and totally irreversible internal commitment today, right in this exact highly critical moment, to permanently resurrect the ancient, deeply powerful, and profoundly transformative art of sapere, actively choosing to walk through the remaining, incredibly precious days of your fleeting life, not as a blind, reactive, and easily manipulated consumer of cheap, worthless noise, but as a silent, terrifyingly sharp, and completely unshakable apex observer, a man who sits quietly, heavily, and perfectly comfortably in the absolute center of the swirling, chaotic storm of human drama, completely untouched by the madness, his mouth firmly, resolutely closed, his mind completely, brutally empty of all toxic, blinding ego, and his incredibly dark, piercing, and unforgiving eyes completely wide open, taking in absolutely every single microscopic detail, every hidden agenda, every subtle lie, and every unspoken, highly valuable truth that the desperate, unobservant, and entirely oblivious world around him so foolishly, tragically, and continuously leaks into the open air. In this profound, incredibly heavy, and entirely untouchable state of elite, total perception,